Hey there, so in this tutorial we will quickly build a demonstration of how the localization works in Laravel, and also we will create a language switcher so that you will be able to see how to switch languages and how the Laravel picks up translations from the translation file. So let's just quickly see what Laravel localization is. So if you are trying to build an application which supports multiple languages, then you need to utilize the localization feature of Laravel. Basically how this works is, in your resources lang directory you will have multiple folders, and inside that multiple folders you will have files which will contain the translation strings for the paragraphs and the messages that you have on the application, and each of the directory will have the separate messages in their own particular language. And how you change the locale is by utilizing this method on the app facade and the set locale method, and you pass in the string of the language that you're trying to change. The problem though is this method will change the locale only for the single request, and for the next request again you need to pass in the same locale again. I have already built a demo application, and what happens is by default the language remains English, and when you change the language, let's say you have got two options from French and Spanish, and if you change the language to Spanish it will change the text to Spanish language, and vice versa for the French. So in this tutorial I'll be building this demo application again, and we will see what goes into creating a successful localization application in the Laravel. So I have already written a tutorial for this for how to build this application. I will go over the same tutorial in this video. So let's just quickly create a new project. We have this project ready, and we will just see if this works fine in the browser. It works fine, so we will move on to the next step, and that is to create the middleware so that the locale is permanent for all the HTTP requests. So once you change the locale, it should be permanent for all the HTTP requests until you change that again. So for that we will utilize the middleware feature of Laravel. So we will create a new middleware. We will name it language. I will open the project in my Visual Studio Code. So in here there must be a new middleware named language. For the simplicity of the tutorial, I'm going to just copy paste the handle method of the middleware, and I'll explain what is going on in the handle method. So this is how the handle method looks. We are just checking if the session has an app locale variable, and if yes, then we will check if the language that is in the app locale belongs to the languages configuration file. If yes, then we will set the locale to that language. So this is what is happening in this middleware. And as you might guess, once we create the middleware, we will put on the middleware to the kernel file so that it is by default for all the web requests. So I will add this middleware here, and if you see in this middleware we are checking if the language that is set in the app locale of the session is in the language configuration file, which we don't have yet. So I will create the new language file. This basically contains all the languages that is supported by your application. So for the demonstration, we have only 3 languages, which is English, France and Spanish, and this is the short form of those languages, which we will be using this key to change the locale. So second step is done. Now we have the ability to change the locale for each and every request by picking up the variable from the session. But how do we set that variable in the session is what comes in the next step. So we will create a language switcher backend code which basically sets the locale in your session. So we will generate a new controller. This is our new controller. I'll open that, and inside this we have a single method which is switch lang, and basically what it does is it checks if the language is in the configuration file, and if yes, it puts it in the session. It puts in the session and the redirects back. Pretty simple. And this is the route file for this controller method. So we have this route which basically hits the language controller switch lang method. So we have the backend ability to change the language, but we need to do it from the front end. So we will move to the next step, which is basically hitting this request from the front end. So for the front end, I'm going to utilize the Bootstrap UI. So I will quickly install Bootstrap on my project. We now have the Bootstrap in our project. So if you see, you can check the login page, and this is the Bootstrap UI that we are using. And if you see that we want somewhere here the option to change the languages, so I will grab this code and go back to the editor, open the blade file, and somewhere here I'll paste the code to show all the languages. So I'll quickly tell you what is going on in this code. So what we are doing is we are getting the default language from our config file, which is basically the app.get locale gives you the default locale, which will be shown on the top, and in the drop down we will show all the other options of languages that the user can choose from. So what we're doing for that is we are looping through the configuration file and we are showing the languages that is available. So basically it is looping through this file, and apart from the default locale, it will show all other languages available to choose from. So now if you refresh this page, you see that English, which is the default language, and these are the languages which the user can choose from. So all sounds good, and if you change the language to French, it sets it in the session, and now the language is French, and it changes to Spanish. But we don't have the translation yet on the page to show if it is actually picking up the translations from the translation file. So this step is done. And what if you want to have the flags for the better visual cues of which languages user is choosing? We can do that as well. So let's move on to that step. So we will utilize this flag icon CSS package to show the flags, and we will quickly install this. and we will add this in the app.scss file. So since we have added a new SCSS file, we want it to compile into a normal CSS file. So you see all the flags that we had is compiled down to the SVG file. So once we have this, we want to change the languages file to something like this. So now we have the language, the locale, and its display name and its flag icon. So usually for some of the languages the flag icon is same, but for some it is different. So for the English language I am utilizing the US flag. So to display the flag icon CSS has a particular code for each of the countries, and for a particular language I am going to display a flag of some different of a particular country. So now my display code is going to change a bit. Instead of this I'll be putting on this. So what is happening is we are utilizing this span class, and this is a variable. So for each of the language, the flag icon is coming from the languages file, and it will grab it from the CSS and put the flag file there. So let's refresh the page and see if it actually made the changes. Yes. So for English we have the US flag, for French we have the France flag, and so on and so forth. So I think what we needed is ready. We can now test the changes. In order to test the changes, you need to have the files in your lang directory. So we have the by default en directory. Let's create two more directories for French and for Spanish. So I will create a new file named messages.php, and in all of them and in this file I'll paste some translation so that we are able to test if it is changing the language for us. So this is for English, this is for French, and this is for, I think this is for French, and this is for the Spanish. Alright, and in order to test it, let's just create a new controller method in the home controller. And the route file. We will create a new view file named language demo.plate.php. Paste in the code here. So if you notice, what we are echoing is _messages.welcome. So by this _, Laravel now knows that it needs to pick up the translation from the translation file. So this is the file name and this is the translation we are trying to pick. So in the messages file we have a welcome translation. It will try to pick that. So let's just test this code. So in the home controller we have the authentication. I'll remove that for the simplicity, and let's go to the language demo page. By default the language is English, so it shows the text in English language. If I try to change the language, it will put that in the session, and since we have the middleware applied, it will pick up the language from the session and call the set locale method on the app facade to change the language. So now the language is French and can be changed to Spanish and back to English. So yeah, in this demo we are utilizing the middleware to change the language until the language is changed back to the whatever the user wants. So that's it. I hope you learned about how to implement the localization as well as the language switcher in Laravel. Thank you.